Hi everybody out there. Once upon a time there was a being, a supernatural being. This being had and has many different names, but let's call this being God. One day, after having done something else for millions and trillions and zillions of time intervals, this God decided to desire a throne. So it created a throne for itself. Why an omnipresent being, a God which is everywhere, would require a throne, a human invention on top of it, remains unexplained. Just that this God created a throne above the waters which were not created by this God, so they must have existed before God started to exist or began to exist and created stuff. So what we know now is that something outside of our senses and our immediate understanding can and will manipulate things which are in our immediate understanding. But nobody knows where this God came from and what it did before it discovered the desire to be worshipped not only by angels but us humans too. Because of this urge to be worshipped, God had to build a place for the humans he wanted to worship him. So off it went to create an unformed shape which was spread out and adorned with streams and paths, as well as some stabilizing mountains, because the place it built was a bit shaky. Yet it calls itself the best of the creators. I wonder if the dissertation also starts off with, "Hi, my name is God." Then we learn that this place, which was especially prepared for humans, was not only shaky, but somehow situated on top of water, which can be easily seen, because if you drill a deep hole you reach water, and was protected from the water above this place by a canopy held up by invisible pillars. Why these poor humans are not protected but constantly interrupted in their worshipping by diseases, germs, viruses, bacteria, poisons, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, radiation, droughts, tornadoes, floods, avalanches, fires, asteroids, we are not told. This being already knew it would like to be worshipped by humans requiring light of a specific wavelength to orientate themselves in their environment. Why humans would only be able to see in this limited spectrum remains unexplained. To provide some light for these humans, 2 light sources were placed on the previously constructed canopy or firmament, one for a fixed period and the other one also for a fixed period. They would travel across this firmament. Humans later were to call this day and night. The one with a bright light was day, and the one with a less bright light they would call night. Then, next to our place, we got some similar places. A huge one as a vacuum cleaner and some less useful ones. But the main concern was this place was going to be the duration of the lights going around or orbit Earth, as we know today that Earth is actually a sphere. Some would count the orbits of the brighter light, others the weaker one, to determine the definitions of the various time intervals. Now that the place for humans they would eventually call Earth was finished, this God was still not quite happy, as he decided to add some more lights to the firmament, and then some more, and some stardust, and, for some unknown reason, some more lights were added which nobody would ever see because they were too far away. And some debris, and some asteroids and meteors which would destroy some of these newly created places. Some of these solar systems and even entire galaxies were set on course to collide with each other. Black holes were placed all over to swallow some of these planets and stars. It seems watching these must be fun for a god. This being now went home and looked down on what it had created. Why we get told there is an up or down when there is no such thing anywhere except on our tiny speck of dust we call Earth remains unexplained. Why an omnipresent God would require a home or house is also left open. Now we finally get to the point where the humans are addressed. We learn that there were some different possibilities as to the base material, but the most probable is that some dust in heaven, God's home place, was used. Then we learned that it was actually some clay, the origins and composition of which are not further specified, or water, or something else entirely, not explicitly mentioned anywhere? Carbon? Somewhere in between creating the universe and humans, there must have been an ad break or something, because when we return, all animals had been created and killed, and some more created and killed. This must have gone on for millions and billions of years. We rejoin the action when humans are created. First, one couple, who then multiply. They were given the names of all the 1.7 million different species and sent on their way. Whether they were the ones who now multiplied, or whether this God also created some other humans, is not explained. It seems they were initially to be exempted from the groveling and worshipping because they were only sent down to earth after they misbehaved. Humans were now multiplying or being created in different parts of this planet. After creating his humans, our God in the story waited 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000 years to come up with the rules and regulations of the worshipping he had in mind all along. Full points for keeping your cards close to your chest. But humans had already managed to generate their own ideas of what good, clean fun was. So this God started from scratch. He killed off everything, including all the innocent animals, except for one pair of each of the millions of species in a boat, and flooded the place. Afterwards, none of the animals died on their way, and all found their way back home. This being called God then started fresh by issuing instructions to the people he created. But it was not like all humans, they recognize a smile, so implant a common factor into everyone. No, it was telling different groups of people different stories by sending invisible emissaries to select humans who were then charged with spreading the words and rituals. This failed miserably, as the messages were not transmitted correctly or not at all, and within 2,000 years resulted in one huge mess here on Earth. Because this God is also all-knowing, it wisely predicted that humans, given wrong instructions, would develop their own. So the decision was made to initially cater for the existing rituals to soften the people who were wrong up a bit before installing the revised rituals. This failed, so this God went ahead anyway and instructed a left turn, and everyone was told to pray towards a black stone, or else. This God then told people stories about all the great things it had done and how it had helped some people kill others and how happy they were. It even taught them magic tricks like turning a stick into a snake or opening up an ocean. Oh, it was so good in those days. Humans were told that God had reserved some magic for itself, so that thunder, for example, was there to praise itself or to punish disobedient humans. It did not trust its own design of birds and their wings, so it decided to keep a hand in there all the time. Humans are also told there is a surprise waiting for them if they do the right things. Unfortunately, they have to die to find out. But it must be worth it. There are some sneak previews which tell humans about a place of abundant everything. Then it told the people what the or else is, for the ones who do not follow the prescribed rituals, who are going to go empty and instead will be treated rather badly forever. It does not take much to go to the less pleasant place. Just a wrong turn, that's it, you had your chance, sorry, curtains, end of the line, off you go, and cheers. What we are not told is why all these rules are not simply implanted like a smile, but using a book in an obscure language that only a handful of people can vaguely make some sense of. Well, some parts make no sense at all to anybody, some are being discussed for 1,000 years without progress, and some are simply redefined by humans. This God even left out some basic instructions for these rituals and the worshipping thingy. How careless. Now fallible humans have to go and decide, which they do. Some ruthless people tell the masses to do all sorts of things, like fall to your knees every few hours, stop eating during the day for a month, going to visit a stone in the desert, and follow all sorts of rituals to keep them busy and from thinking. This worked, And this God now had a large number of humans, all worshipping him, and they lived happily ever after. Well, not quite. Something not foreseen by this clever being is, amongst other basic things like electricity, the internet and personal computers to access it. Humans today can look up the facts and compare them to the claims made by this book called the Quran, and we can very quickly establish that this book was never actually written by a higher developed and invisible being, but mere humans. Maybe one of the humans was called Muhammad. We don't know who they were, just that there were some texts circulating by the 10th century which contained much of what was written down in the two Bibles and various other texts. Just like the instigators of the New Testament never imagined that humans 2,000 years later would still have these texts and would be in a position to place them side by side on a computer and see the discrepancies and mistakes, showing that these texts were just as man-made as the later Quran. Why would anyone even consider that the Quran was not man-made, but the product of a god? Well, only because the Quran says so. Nothing in the book would substantiate the divine origin claimed by its followers, as much as they try to obfuscate the issue or have people ignore senseless or useless commands. Some even make conceited claims, such as the Quran being without a single error and inimitable. Some invent new meanings for words in their attempt to fool other followers into believing these false claims. And the funny thing is, many do, thinking it will elevate their credibility or importance. Well, today, in the information age, all that is left for this stubborn clinging to the 7th century values is ridicule and contempt. Sorry, but that is reality. Other texts which are just as good or bad as the Quran have been presented. A better and improved version has been presented for use from the 21st century onwards. And yes, there are Muslims today who are able to consolidate their belief and the modern world, but sadly most are not. They demand stagnation and a return to the values of the 7th century. They blindly believe in the claims made in the book and don't even dare question or check the validity out of fear and the threat of an everlasting hell they think is real. It is up to every individual to make the right choice, live in the past or the present, abort education or accept it, learn about reality and the truth and embrace it, or deny it. Now, because I'm falsely attacked again and again, I do not hate Muslims or Islam. I do not bash Muslims or Islam. If a Muslim requires the belief in a Quran to get through the day, fine by me. Just don't expect anyone else, including me, to believe this fairy tale of the Quran being a divine text is the truth and part of the real world. It is not. Sorry.